Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Foltz Fitness Podcast. I'm again joined with Lilly today, and we are going to be going over everything East Fork 100 and just give a little bit of an insight and overview of what race day was like.
Well, hey guys, welcome back. We're glad to have you back again.
And we're going to just dive right in and kind of follow the schedule of how things went down. So I actually signed up for this race back in January after I wrote down all of my goals for the year. I'm a very goal-driven and oriented person, and I like to set about anywhere from 8 to 15 goals every year. And one of my goals for the year was to complete a 100-mile ultra marathon, and we picked the East Fork 100 as that race. So we went down there on Friday afternoon after I got off work. We left about 2 o'clock?
Around then, yeah.
2 or 3 o'clock. And there was a pre-race meeting at 6. So we picked up the packet, all the information. They did a little pre-race briefing. It was about a 2-hour drive for us or so, just east of Cincinnati at East Fork State Park. So we got down there, had the meeting, and then we finished up there and went to check into our Airbnb, which was in a little town called New Richmond, and it was right on the Ohio River, right on the Kentucky line. So beautiful little Airbnb. I guess it was more of like an apartment style, but it was a really cool place. Had a nice balcony, and we just hung out there for the evening. Got our final meal in, which was a pasta dish. I did some grilled chicken with some fettuccine noodles and just some red sauce, and had some couple slices of bread, and just getting in those final carbs to cap off the carb load. And we tried to get to bed a little bit early because we had an early wake up. We woke up about 4:45 race morning. The race started at 7 a.m., so a little bit later of a start for an ultra than normal. Usually you're starting at 5 a.m. or so. So we got a little bit of sleep. We didn't really sleep all that much. The pre-race nerves and all just the excitement built around this race. I pretty much spent all of this year building for this race. This was my A race on the year. So all of the other races we did were just a build up to what we ultimately were about to tackle at East Fork. So we kicked off our morning with some breakfast, just a standard breakfast that I like to eat before all my long runs and before races in particular. Just some sourdough, honey, peanut butter, some eggs and oats, and just got in some good calories, some dense food before, about 2 hours before the start. And we then just kept loading up on electrolytes and G1M Sport. I use Bear Performance Nutrition supplements for all my hydration needs. So just getting in more carbs, more electrolytes, and just really making sure we're staying on top of sodium to ensure we don't cramp. We're going to be losing a lot throughout the next 30 hours. So it was very vital that we got those in. So we ate those, packed up all of our stuff because we weren't coming back to the Airbnb. My parents were in town for the race with us, so they were going to stay overnight there, but we were not coming back to the Airbnb. Lily got up a little bit later than I did, but we made our way to the state park at about 6 a.m., and we got there plenty of time. One thing about races that you want to make sure you do is that you're not rushing around on race day. So we got there in plenty of time. I was there, I think, 40 minutes before the start. So just giving myself enough time to relax, go to the bathroom, do the things that I need to get done before we start the race, stretch out, drop the drop bags off. For those of you who don't know, in ultras, many of the aid stations that you encounter will allow you to have drop bags. So basically, a drop bag can include anything from extra clothes, extra shoes, socks, snacks, anything you want to put in there that you might need at those rest stops throughout the race, you can include in your drop bags. So there was 2 aid stations in particular that allowed drop bags, and I knew Lilly wasn't going to be able to see me at the 1 aid station the entire race. So we made sure we had a stock drop bag, and we just had that bag ready at an aid station called the Nature Center, which was about 20 miles in to the loop. So this was a loop course, and it totaled to be about 34 miles per loop because the race did run a little bit long. We ran a total of 102 miles. So it was about 34 miles each loop, and we ran it 3 times. Mm-hmm. So 20 miles into each loop, I knew Lilly wasn't going to be able to be at that aid station. But majority of the time, she could be at those other aid stations, except on loop number 1. Mm-hmm. You were restricted, crew was restricted to only the first aid station. So she can only see me after mile 7, and then she wouldn't see me again until mile 34. Mm-hmm. So we really made sure that we utilized the drop bags on that loop. That's what those are for. That's why we made them. We prepared them in a way. We included the things that we thought we would need at those particular spots.
What did you include in all those drop bags?
So at Nature Center, since I knew you weren't going to be there at all throughout the entire race, I made sure I included a lot of gels and a lot of electrolyte sticks because I didn't want to have to rely on their electrolytes that they were handing out. I wanted to use what I used in my training and what I've used for the last year and a half, really.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I had enough of those. I had enough gels because I knew late in the race in particular, I was going to be fueling mainly on liquid calories, most likely, just because of stomach discomfort and it being hot and trying to eat while it's hot. So I wanted to make sure I had enough gels, enough electrolytes, and I also included some extra blister tape in case I needed it. I included some paydays. I love mini paydays in my pack for ultras. They're a great snack, just good fats, good carbs, quick sugars. They don't melt like other candies do, which makes them ideal for hot races. And then I included just some odds and ends like some wintergreen mints, like just stuff to put in my mouth and just, when you're eating a lot of salt, sometimes it's nice to be able to suck on something sweet for a little while. So made sure that we had some of those in there, and then some peanut butter pretzels, banana chips, anything I might crave throughout the race we threw in that drop bag. And then the other drop bag, which was at Little Miami, which is the final aid station on the loop. What mile marker is that at?
Around mile 25, and then again around 60 and 93.
Okay, so about 25 miles into the loop, we have the final aid station, and that one's pretty unique because it crosses a river, and the aid station's just on the other side of this river. And the river was about waist deep, which was pretty crazy because they hadn't gotten a lot of rain lately, and the trails were extremely dry. So I can only imagine if they had gotten rain, what that creek crossing may have looked like. But yeah, it was a very unique aid station, very small aid station, but they allowed you to have small drop bags. And in that one, I included many of the same things, a lot of gels, but it was a much smaller drop bag because you were going to be able to be there on loops 2 and 3. Just the first loop, they didn't want all the crews going to the aid stations because there was a 50K race going on, the 100K race, the 100-mile race. So they didn't want all that traffic going to some of those smaller spots.
Yeah.
I also included socks in that drop bag because of it being a river crossing. I wanted to have that option to change out socks if I needed to. So that's kind of what I included in the drop bags. So we dropped those off on race morning when we got to the start line, and there was a lot of build-up energy you could feel at the start line, which is a little bit unique because I feel like at a lot of trail races, you don't have a lot of energy at the start line, more so because it's such a long race that you can't really get like amped up or excited like you could for a marathon, because you know you're going to be racing a marathon the entire time. Where when you come into an ultra, it's more of like, you know, it's going to be a long, very long day.
And more than a day.
Multiple times, for many people, more than one day. So I think that was a little bit unique for me. I didn't really experience that at my first few ultras, but there was definitely some energy at the start line. And there was, I think, a total of 250 runners.
For the 100.
For the 3 races.
Oh, okay.
The 100-miler had 72 runners, I believe.
Dang.
And the other ones, they had a 50K, like I said, and a 100K. And then they had a 15-mile race starting a couple hours after us. So it was a pretty big race. This is only the second year they've put this race on. It's a company, or I guess they're a company called Empower Ultras. And they're a really cool brand. It's ran by 2 ladies, and they are all about empowering women to get into ultra running, which is very cool. And they definitely had a lot of women show out for that race.
I would definitely agree with that. That was definitely the biggest. It was definitely, women were the majority in this race for sure, which is really great to see.
Yeah, there was a good mix, but what they stand for and what their company's trying to do is really good, and trying to introduce women and get them on the trails.
Yeah.
And I know for some people, not just women, but some people are a little bit hesitant to run on the trails just because of all the unknowns. But it's really good to see the community come together and really push each other to enjoy the trails and get on them. So dropped our drop bags off. We did a little bit of stretching, mainly just trying to stay off our feet, but also get loose for what we were about to do. And we played the national anthem, and 7 o'clock we were on our way. Excuse me. The gun went off, and we were ready to go. So the first part of the race started on the road, and it was only for loop 1 because they didn't want a Congo line of people trying to manage
a one-man trail,
the single track trail. So we started on the road with everybody, and then we went about 0.8, 0.9 miles, and we dropped down into the woods onto some single track. Yeah. And we were on our way. It was a beautiful morning. I went out a little bit faster than I would have liked to, but I think that's everybody. So we started out on this road, so it was easy runnable section for that first little bit. We dipped into the woods, and that first 7-mile section was relatively flat. We were able to run a good bit of that throughout all of the loops, but especially early on. So we took advantage of some of the flats, and then I came into you at the first aid station. You kind of pop out of the woods, and you actually have to run down to the aid station.
It's a little bit of a ways too.
Yeah, it's probably a half mile once you hit the road, and then you kind of go downhill to the boat ramp. It was Resinger boat ramp, aid station. So we kind of went down the hill and checked into the aid station. That's where I saw you first. Yeah.
At this aid station, it was nice. They did have like a manned toilet, so you didn't have to go into a porta potty. I thought that was pretty nice. And then a fully manned aid station. So if you needed anything, there was additional crew there too to help.
Yeah, so I saw you. I took a seat, and I mean, I was 7 miles in, so nothing crazy was really happening yet. We just reloaded the vest. I think you gave me some more gels, filled up the bottles. We weren't running a bladder on. I wasn't running a bladder on my pack. I was just running the 2 front bottles, and they each hold about 17 ounces of water.
Yeah, it's a full bottle at least.
So we were running water in one, and then G1M Sport, which is BPN's carb drink. Mm-hmm. It's got 80 calories, 20 grams of carbs, and 350 milligrams of sodium. And we would also put in a scoop of their electrolytes. So we were getting 850 milligrams of sodium per bottle that we finished, along with those carbs and calories. So very good fueling source. I've used them in all my races. So we just stuck to that system, and you sent me on my way, and I was on to the second section, which was most definitely the hardest section of the race, in my opinion. We have to climb back out of the aid station about a half mile up the road. Then we get back into the woods, and it's a climb up this power line. And then throughout that section, there was no very prolonged or significant climbs, but there was a lot of dips. So you would kind of go up and then you would come straight down and then you would have to go back up out of the valley. And there was a bunch of those. And those are almost worse than a sustained climb because coming down to get into those valleys is very hard on the knees. Anybody that's ran any amount of time knows that declining on steep surface slopes or surfaces is much more difficult than climbing them. So the knees were definitely taking a hit early on. And I mean, you couldn't really run the downs. They were too steep and too kind of like washed out where the waters ran. So you had to just be careful on them, take them slow. And that's kind of what we did. We stayed pretty conservative early on in the race, I thought. And that's really what you have to do in these long efforts. Yeah. So this section of the race had a creek crossing. It was about knee deep, and we crossed that about mile 10 of the loop, and then we had about 3-ish more miles until the next aid station. What's that aid station, number 2?
The second one you went to?
Yeah.
Twin Bridges.
So Twin Bridges aid station. Again, this first loop, crew could only access
on the second and third loop.
Yes. So the first loop she could only access at mile 7. So I was on my own until
34.
mile 34 till I got back to the start line. So I didn't have any drop bags at this one, but the aid station was manned. I mean, it was a fully stocked aid station. We got some pancakes there. That morning we got some Coke, some ginger ale, all the good stuff that you get at ultra marathon aid stations. The pancakes were very good. They had blueberry and original pancakes, as well as bacon and all kinds of cookies and snacks. So we definitely refueled, took advantage of that. And then we didn't spend a lot of time there because obviously Lilly wasn't there, so we weren't sitting down or anything like that. But we left that aid station and we're headed to the nature center. Mm-hmm. So mile 20, we hit the nature center aid station. Again, I didn't spend a lot of time there. This was by far the most stocked aid station on the loop. They had menus of food they could make you. One of the volunteers came over and said, "We got menus if you want a menu." I said, "No, as long as you got pancakes, I'm all set." So I grabbed a few pancakes, grabbed a few cookies, and tried to move as I ate while I was still feeling good early on in the race. And then after this aid station, we actually had about 2.5 miles of road. And a lot of people will think that, oh, it's road running. It's got to be a lot easier. And when it's hot out and your feet are starting to ache and you got trail shoes on, it's not always easier running on the road.
It definitely got warm throughout the day.
I mean, you would get on those road sections and the sun was beating down. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was 86 and humid. Yeah. Pretty much Saturday and Sunday of the race, and you could just feel the heat radiating off that blacktop, and it was pretty brutal out there. But we did pick up a little bit of pace here on the road sections. We're early on in the race. We're just over 20 miles in at this point, mm-hmm. and we were headed to the final aid station, which is Little Miami. So we got in there and crossed the creek, and didn't have any issues. I didn't change shoes out after that crossing. I felt good in what I was in. Just made a quick stop, refilled the bottles, and grabbed a few little snacks and just kept hiking. Coming out of that aid station from the river, you kind of got to hike up this stone drive. It's kind of a decent little climb, and you just come right up out of there, and then you hit the road again, and then it's a big climb up the road. It's probably from the river to the top of the climb of the road is definitely the biggest climb in the race. Mm-hmm. So we just, again, staying conservative, not pushing too hard early on, which is really easy to do in these type of races. So we just kept it conservative. We got up on top and picked up a little bit of pace once it leveled out. And then we were headed back to the start line. So they did have an unmanned water stop between the final aid station and the start line aid station. So about halfway through, I was able to fill up the bottles again. At this point, it was the hottest part of the day, where we were hitting the afternoon hours, and filled up those bottles. Kept the pace going pretty good, and finished that first loop in just under 8 hours. I think
Yeah.
we finished 34 miles in just under 8 hours, which was definitely a little faster than I had wanted. But we were feeling good, and that's where I got to see my family and you again.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like what you did after that first loop?
So after the first loop is when we decided to change the shoes and socks. So we got out of the first pair of shoes, changed out the socks, retaped the feet, and put on a different pair of. I was running in the Nike Zagama 2 trail shoes to start, and then I had the original Nike Zagamas as the second shoe in the rotation. So I put those on. We again refilled the bottles, refilled the vest, got gels. I got off my feet for a little while and drank some Dr. Pepper. I had a sandwich. So my original fueling strategy was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on English muffins. That's what I did at the Mohican 50 miler. And that's kind of what I did throughout my long runs in training. So that's what we were going with, or planning on going with, in this race. So we grabbed that. I finished off the Dr. Pepper, changed out my shirt, and said bye to you guys, and I just took my sandwich with me.
Yeah.
And did some hiking and tried to get that sandwich down, but it just wasn't settling with me very well. I don't know why or what was going on, but it was really dry, first of all, and it was hard when your mouth is already dry from all the running and whatnot. It's hard to get some of that drier food down, so you almost have to just kind of wash it down with fluids, but it still wasn't working for me. And then after I got about a half mile into the second loop, my stomach just kind of wasn't feeling good. I was starting to get a little bit queasy, and I was a little bit nervous for that because
it was still early.
It was still early on in the race, and I've heard of a lot of stories of ultra runners and their stomachs turning, and when your stomach turns, sometimes it's hard to come back from that, and it's hard to get those calories in that you need so badly to continue. I mean,
you have to.
We had how many more miles? We had
70 more
65 more miles to run. So you have to eat to be able to perform and keep your energy levels up. So I was getting pretty concerned that something good was something not good was coming. So I tried to choke the sandwich down, couldn't get it all down, threw it down, and just kept hiking. And I actually threw up a little bit of water. No solids, just a little bit of water, which I guess was a good sign that I was still keeping food down. And this was definitely the first low point of the race that I experienced. I just wasn't feeling great. I was still moving fine. Mentally, I was still in it, but my stomach and my body just was kind of out of it.
Yeah, thankfully I was able to see you just after another 7 miles after that, so I was able to check in pretty quick.
Yeah, so I saw you again after another 7 miles, obviously, and I told you I wasn't feeling great, but I kind of came out of that a little bit. Stomach started to feel better, and then you informed me that you went and picked up some lemonade ices, and that absolutely hit the spot because I've never actually trained or done anything with ices before. And when you told me you had that thing, I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. So it's funny how when you get into these ultras and you start getting deep in mileage, what sounds good to you can change like in an instant. So I got this icy out and just absolutely smashed this icy. It was so good. It was hot out still, even though we were getting closer to evening time. And I love that. That was a very good surprise to have at that aid station. And at this point, we were pretty much fueling on liquid calories for the most part. We were getting in a lot of gels. We were getting in Dr. Pepper and ginger ale at every aid station. For those of you who don't know, ginger ale is a very good drink to utilize when the stomach's not feeling great. It can help with nauseousness and just settling your stomach down. So every aid station from here on out, I was taking at least 1 cup of ginger ale. And we were fueling pretty much, like I said, all on liquids. We used some Go bars late in the race, some BPN Go bars, 200 calories per bar, lots of carbs. I think there's 36 grams maybe in a Go bar. I don't know exactly, but they're light on the stomach and they're really good. So I grabbed a headlamp from you at this aid station just as a precautionary. I didn't think I would need it until the next section. But it's always good when it's starting to get somewhat close to dark to grab a headlamp, because you never know if you're going to...
What could happen.
Yeah, you never know what could happen. You could hurt an ankle or something, and, you know, it might set you back, or a section just might take longer than you planned for it to take.
Yeah, so as far as like a timeline, you finished the first loop around 2:30 p.m. And then by the time I saw you again, it was probably closer to 6 at this aid station.
Yeah, so I grabbed headlamp.
Yeah.
And at this point, I had already... No, I hadn't taken my... this is where I picked up my trekking poles for the first time.
Correct.
So I ran that first section of
the race.
loop 2.
Yeah.
And the whole first loop without trek poles. And I knew that the second section of the loop was by far the hardest as far as elevation goes.
Yeah.
So that's where I decided to pick up my poles. So you set me off there, and you were headed to the next aid station because you could be at all of them now except for the nature center.
Yeah.
So we were headed to the Twin Bridges aid station again, and we got in there plenty of time before dark. We weren't pushing it. We weren't close yet, and just refueled again. Did the routine. We had it down by now. We had what we needed. What needed to go in the vest, things like that. So I changed out from my bucket hat, put on normal hat, got everything ready for the night section, grabbed my other headlamp so I had a backup, and I don't know if we did anything different at that aid station.
No, I feel like we just did the normal, like, switch out the fluid packs, gave you some more paydays in your pack. I think at that point you had gone through more gels and more electrolyte tablets. We just tried to keep those stocked at all times. And then after that first loop, I was able to see you about every 7 miles on average.
Yeah, on average, I'd say.
So that was pretty helpful to be able to see you.
I would also say that we would have been about 50 miles in at that point.
Yeah, around this point. I mean, we have a cheat paper here of the race information, but based on that was around 46. So since it was a little long, it was probably closer to 48.
About 48
50.
miles in. I think it was about 48. So we were about halfway in at this point, and the sun was starting to set once we left that aid station. Yeah. And I got a few miles into that section, and then the sun had pretty much set, and I pulled out the headlamp and got ready for the night section. So we really weren't feeling all that tired at all, to be completely honest. Like, we were staying on top of calories, caffeine, hydration. Nothing really felt out of sorts.
Yeah, it was really like a snap, like you snapped back, which is good.
At this point in the race, yeah, after that I had that small stomach issue at, mile 35, we were smooth sailing by the time we got to mile 50. Obviously, we were moving a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But that's pretty expected, especially when the nighttime comes. And we thought that it would probably cool off during the night and we could move a little bit better, but that just was not the case. It stayed pretty warm for the majority of the night, and we never really got that relief we thought we were going to get. So I moved on from Twin Bridges and got to the Nature Center. The Nature Center volunteers were just absolutely awesome, and I actually got linked up with 2 other runners.
Yeah.
I won't say their names, but they were sisters, and they were very, very nice people. They asked me, where's your pacer at? Like, where are you running here by yourself? Like, and I said, well, I don't have a pacer. And they kind of looked at me like, well, what are you going to do in the night section? And I was like, it's just going to be me. And they were kind enough. They're like, well, we're your friends. And her pacer said, I'm going to take care of you as long as you're running with us. So that's the kind of people that you see in the ultra community. And
It's amazing.
Sure enough, every so often she'd remind me, like, make sure you're taking in your calories, doing this and that. And I actually came into Nature Center with them, and I ended up leaving Nature Center and headed to Little Miami to cross the river again. That section is when it was really getting dark, obviously. Yeah. So it was a little bit different. I've never really ran trails in the night. I've done a lot of my training in the early mornings, and it's been dark out, and I've been on the roads, but I've never really done a lot of trail training in the dark.
Yeah.
So
at this point, it was probably like 11:30, around 11 maybe, that I got to see you at this aid station, and I didn't know what to expect at this point. It was late at night. I was hoping he was still doing good as far as being able to keep food down, and we had brought our little griddle, so I thought, why not prepare some little chicken and cheese quesadillas for him?
Those things were good, too. Chicken was a little bit dry, but the quesadilla taste was really good, actually.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of something simple, hopefully palatable. So you did eat one of those at that aid station, switched out the packs again, the fluid packs.
We changed shoes here, too.
Yes.
We did. We changed shoes again.
Yeah, it was right after the river crossing.
And we decided to change there. So yeah. I actually put the shoes on that I started the race in.
Yeah, you put them back on. We had brought 4 pairs, anticipating that you were going to go through them all, but switched back.
I brought 2 pairs of Nike Zagama 2s, and I brought my original pair of Nike Zagamas, and I also had a pair of Speedlands, and I had done a lot of running in those in the past. They're great. They drain super well, so I thought I might utilize them a little bit with all the creek crossings. I think we had about 3 creek crossings per loop that your feet were going to get fully submerged, so 9 total. Mm-hmm. And just wanting to avoid blisters and
Absolutely.
Stuff, we wanted to make sure we had enough socks
options
and enough pairs of shoes in case we needed to switch things out. But I never really trained much leading up to this race in those shoes, so I was a little bit hesitant to put them on and race in them. So my shoes from earlier had dried out enough, so we just threw those back on.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad were with you at this aid station, too.
Yeah, it was getting late, and I was glad to see that they were able to make it out again. They were headed to bed right after that. In between, I had not slept yet at this point, but I cannot believe that you weren't even exhausted yet.
No, we were really still feeling good. And we were in uncharted territory because the first trail, not first trail race, but the first longer trail race that I ran was the Mohican 50.
Yeah.
And we were that race we ran 51 total miles. So we had passed the 51 mile mark, and we were in new territory and to mileage that I've never seen before.
Especially running in the dark. I mean, that race you were done before the sun was setting, and it's got to be totally different running at night.
Oh, 100%. Everything looks like something. All the trees and the shadows, like the way your headlamp shines on them and you're moving, it always looks like there's something around. But I settled in okay. I mean, the moon was out pretty bright that night, and there was a little bit of light from that. And I thought I would see a lot more runners at night. And to be honest, we were so spread out, I really didn't see another runner for a long time.
Yeah, I know that a couple times when I would walk down to the aid station, more towards the end, but they would try to keep a timer of how often you guys were spread out. I know that in between the Risinger ramp, the boat ramp, at one point they were just waiting to see how long it was. They were like an hour and a half in, and they were like, "Anybody seen anybody?" No.
Yeah, we were really spread out. So the first loop I ran with a lot of different people, And then the second loop, for a while, I ran with those two sisters.
Yeah.
But after Nature Center, I never saw them again. And then there was another guy that I leapfrogged here and there with, but I hadn't seen him for a while. And yeah, so you guys were there. We got everything changed out, and then I was on my way back to the
start line. At that point, it was probably 1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it had to have been at least 1 a.m. So I think I finished that second loop in about 12 hours.
Yeah.
So the goal kind of going into this race was I wanted to finish somewhere around 30 hours. Obviously, that was the A goal, to finish under 30. The B goal was to finish under 32, and a C goal was just to finish the race.
Yeah.
It was a 40-hour cutoff, so it's a very generous cutoff, which is great for people new to ultras. So you could run the 100K, which is 2 loops, and you had 40 hours to finish. So I think that's another really cool thing about this race is that you don't have to feel overwhelmed about hitting a 30-hour cutoff like some of these hundreds. So it definitely allows for more people to finish and set up more people for success, which is really great. So, yeah, we finished the second loop in about 12 hours. And to be completely honest with you, I don't really remember a lot from that aid. It was
that
late.
One was fairly quick. Yeah, we just came in, again, switched out the packs. I think you ate a couple paydays. I had packed the gels. I think at that point you needed some more electrolyte tabs again. Those you must have been using pretty often.
I was. So at Mohican, I didn't really use a lot of electrolyte tabs. But at my 50K, I had a point where I was feeling cramps coming on, so I used them. But they're always something that I've kept in my pack and that I've trained with.
Yeah.
So I know that I can handle them. And during this race, for whatever reason, I just felt the need to continue to take them. And I'm not talking the salt capsules. I'm talking about the tablets that you chew. I just find that those get into my system a little bit faster than the ones that you take with water. So I had plenty packs of these. I kept them in my pack at all times. And every 2 hours, maybe hour and a half, I would take 2 or 3. Or if I just felt like needed some salt, there's different signs you can pick up. So a lot of times, when you're in these big races, if something tastes a little bit bitter and it doesn't quite taste the same that it did, that can be a sign that you're a little bit low on salt. So if I ate something and I thought, ooh, that didn't taste right, or that tasted a little bit bitter and not as sweet as normal, then I would pop a couple salt tabs.
There's got to be clues too, as far as feeling you didn't cramp at all, but preventing those cramps, feeling any sort of wooziness, I'm sure that would be a good call.
Right. Yeah. And I've been in marathons before where I could feel a muscle almost pulsating, and that a cramp's about to come. So that's definitely a sign that you need to get in salt fast.
Yeah, pop a couple tablets.
So just popping tablets. We actually had a little bit of a little mini salt shaker of just pure salt.
Yeah, I believe we did use that at that aid station.
So we just to get extra salt in really fast, and a hefty amount of it too.
It's just Celtic salt, and just pop it on the tongue, swig some water, and you were good.
Yep. So I don't remember a lot from that aid station. We did change out the shirt again for the rest of the night section. And then we were about 68 miles in at that point.
Yeah. Next was back to that Rising Your Boat ramp.
Yep. So we set out on the first section of the race again, and it was in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And I remember looking at Lilly as I was leaving that aid station, and I said, this is exactly why we signed up for the race.
Yeah.
This loop right here is going to tell me everything I need to know about myself and where I'm at mentally. All the training, this is why we trained, is to get to this final loop and see what we're made of. And I was very motivated on setting out on that loop, and I knew I still had a chance to come in under 30 hours. And then I got about 3 miles into that loop, and I hit my all-time low of the race. and I really only had two major lows in this race. That one at mile 35 when the stomach wasn't feeling great, and then this was a big time one. I was 70 miles in, and
I was going to say, before that, I mean, every single aid station you came in, you were like, I'm feeling great. This is awesome. I mean, the only time that you questioned anything was after your stomach was feeling a little iffy, but I'd never seen you so positive.
yeah, I felt great. So I got like a mile and a half, 2 miles into the section, and I just kind of felt like garbage. Like
Yeah.
I just
Hitting a wall.
I was hitting a little bit of a wall. It was middle of the night. I'm obviously starting to get a little bit tired at this point, and a couple times I had to stop and just lean on my trek poles and just kind of take a second to recollect my thoughts. And I never really thought about like quitting or anything. That was never that was never on the table at any point in this race.
An option.
So I just kept telling myself, and what story do you want to tell at the end of the day? Like how do you want to tell this story, and what does this story going to include, and how do you want to leave the thought of this race? Do you want to just be down and kind of suffer through it, or are we going to pull ourselves out of it and keep moving forward? So I just kept telling myself that. I kept telling myself not to quit in the middle, and just kept right on trucking, even though it was uncomfortable. And I came into that Risinger boat ramp aid station probably a little slower than we anticipated, but we made it. And I checked in, and we definitely took more of a stop here to kind of recollect. It was still dark out.
Yeah, I think at this point it was around 3 a.m.
3 or 4 it had to have been,
I think it might have been 4.
Because it got light out in the next section.
Yes.
So I don't really remember too much from that aid station. I don't think anything crazy happened.
No.
We probably had some ices because you went and picked up some more after I
did.
Enjoyed that first one.
At that point, looking back, I had no clue that you were in a mental low at that point. So, I know it's probably not easy to talk about, but is there anything you would have expected differently? Like, as far as like, would you wanted to talk about things?
Not really. I am a very, I like to keep my emotions to myself a little bit, as you probably know.
Yeah.
I don't show a lot of emotion in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm feeling that much discomfort, I rather just deal with it on my own and just kind of work through it. I mean, I've been in a lot of discomfort in training. That's why we train long runs. That's why we do these things, is so we get a little bit of a taste of what it's going to be like in the race. But at this particular moment, you couldn't replicate what I was feeling in training, because you're not ever going to run a training run of 70 miles. It's just not going to happen. So that was definitely new, but I actually worked through that low pretty well. And I think probably by the time I saw you at that aid station, that I probably didn't look like I was.
I had no clue. So you're saying in between the boat ramp and the Twin Bridges was your low?
No, my low was between
the start
and Risinger boat ramp, the first aid. But you probably wouldn't have been able to tell that.
No.
Because like I said, I don't really show a lot of emotion.
I just knew this next section was tough for you too.
Yeah, I knew that the second section of the race was by far the hardest. There was a lot of climbing and descending, and like I said, there was no sustained climbs, but they're just big dips. So you go down into this ravine/valley, and then you come right back up, and they're very steep, but they're not prolonged. They're just quick, but there's probably 4 of them on this section.
Oh wow!
So you're doing these a lot, and you really got to slow down on them. I mean, there's really no way around it.
Yeah.
So we were working through those. We got probably 2 miles out from the aid station, roughly, when the sun started coming up.
Yeah.
And it was a complete rejuvenation for me.
Yes.
So that sun came up, and for those of you who have ran ultras before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. When that sun comes up on day 2, it's just like you have new life.
Yeah.
everything just gets better. I don't really know how to
Just
explain it.
a reset.
It's just like a mental reset.
Yeah.
Like it's a new day. Like here we go. And at that point, when we hit the 24-hour mark, I was 81 miles in.
Yep.
And probably the highest point in the race was mile 80 for me. So, which is a little bit crazy because just 10 miles ago we were
at a low.
We were at the lowest point of the race.
Yeah.
But that's how quickly things can change in ultras. It can change in a blink of an eye. So,
or a couple hours in that case.
Yeah. Yes, a couple hours. But seems like it's pretty quick.
Yeah, especially when you look at the grand scheme of things.
So that's a huge tip for anybody who's thinking about running ultra or who is signed up for an ultra, is that just because you're in a low moment doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And most likely you're going to come out of that and you're going to ride a high for a while.
Yeah, I think you do a very good job at not focusing on the pain that you're feeling, where a lot of people do tend to focus on the pain that they're feeling in their legs, the tiredness. I think you definitely were at an advantage in that aspect.
For sure. Whatever you focus on is going to be the main thing that you feel. So just taking in the things around you and trying to keep your mind off the discomfort is a big key in these races. And another thing on top of that is knowing that as soon as you cross that finish line, all that pain is instantly going to go away.
Yeah.
Like you can be in as much discomfort as you want, but once you get across that finish line, it's over.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're in uncomfortable situations in these races, is just think about how quickly it's going to end once you get across that finish line.
I feel like at this point too, you're mentally probably shifting towards, I've only got 20 miles left. I've already done this.
That's exactly right. In ultras, another thing that you don't want to do is think too far ahead.
Yeah.
So you always want to stay in the mile you're in and try not to think about what you have coming down the road. But when I got to mile 80, I started to think about, this is becoming more realistic now.
It's going to happen.
When you get 80 miles in, it's like, I haven't quit yet. So, and when you're within 20 miles, you're not going to quit.
Yeah.
So I just kind of had that mindset, and I let myself think like that for a second. It's like, this is becoming more realistic, barring anything crazy like a twisted ankle or something.
Yeah, thank goodness.
So I let myself go think ahead a little bit there, and then I just kind of focused back in and was like, we got to stay focused and do what we've been doing this entire race. So I saw you at the Twin Bridges aid station, and the sun was up. And we got some more pancakes at Twin Bridges, and we sat down, and I don't know what all, we didn't change shoes.
Nope.
I got out of my shoes. I took them off for a second to let the feet cool down. And I obviously took the headlamps off, gave you the headlamps. Didn't change shirt or anything here.
I just thought another thing that we did in the middle of the night. You did grab those solar chargers.
That's right.
At one point, you took solar chargers to keep
my phone charged.
And then I took your headphones as well to charge those, so you had those to get through the night.
Yep. So you had my headphones for a while. I think that's where I picked them back up, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I didn't use them during the night. I didn't use my headphones during the night section at all.
But I charged them after you used them all day, which thank goodness they last.
Yep. So I picked up the headphones. And then got on my way again. I was on my way to Nature Center again.
Yep.
So got into Nature Center. I don't remember what mileage that would have been.
It says it's around 87, 88.
Okay, so we would have been
closer to 90?
We'd have been about 88 to 89. That's right. That's about right.
Okay.
Because I remember taking a short video at mile 90, which was on the road section, slightly after that. So got into Nature Center, got a few things out of my drop bag. We were starting to run a little low on gels in our tote, which was okay because we had gels in the drop bag at Nature Center and at the final aid station. So we were fine on gels. We just had to take them from the drop bags instead of what you had. So I picked up gels, picked up some paydays. They had some paydays there, actually, so I grabbed a few extras and then moved my drop bag to the out section because we were no longer coming back to the aid station. And I grabbed some more pancakes. They had more pancakes at that one. That was the fully stocked one. I mean, you could have probably told them to make you a pepperoni pizza, and they would have probably whipped up a pizza. But so I grabbed some pancakes, and then I just kept hiking. And at this point, we're obviously moving very slow.
Yeah.
The feet were aching very badly, and part of that was my fault because I should have picked up a few pairs of shoes that were a little bit bigger in size.
Yes.
Because the feet swelled up so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this really magnified the feet ache because we were now, it was hot out again. It was almost noon.
Yes.
And the sun is just beating down on this open road section for 2.5 miles. The feet are obviously in a lot of discomfort. And now we're on a hard road surface.
Mm-hmm.
So that just totally amplified the achingness in those feet. And we just kept it slow because that's all we really could do at that point. But we just kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other. That's what I just kept telling myself. And we were making our way to the final aid station and the final river crossing. So I was really excited when I got to the river because I saw you and my dad on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And you guys were there during the second loop, but you didn't come down
Correct.
the hill to the aid station. So you were there, got some good video, and Dad saw me there, and you guys watched me cross the creek. That was...
Yeah, it's definitely no joke to get down there. There's a pretty significant hill. It's kind of washed out, so you got to be careful where you're stepping.
Yeah.
I assume that's how most of the trails were.
Yeah, a lot of the trails were like that. But, yeah, you guys saw me cross the river, and...
I think at that point it was closer to 11. And then, yeah, I think about 11 o'clock.
Okay, so 11 o'clock, and we were... I guess that would have been 92-ish miles in.
Yeah.
92 miles in, and I remember, it's funny, you guys will see in the YouTube video, when I crossed that creek, I remember just walking past you guys and saying, we're almost done with this thing. And we didn't really stop at the aid station for anything. I think I grabbed some ginger ale and some Coke from them. I don't even think I grabbed Coke. I think I just grabbed ginger ale.
Yeah.
And I went up to the top of the hill where you guys were set up.
Mm-hmm.
You guys had everything laid out like you had the entire race. I grabbed my drop bag, and you guys just took my drop bag from that aid station.
Yeah.
And we carried it up because it had my last pair of socks in it.
And more gels.
And more gels. So got up there, got off the feet, changed the socks out.
Yep.
We retaped.
Yes, we did at that point.
Even though we only had roughly 8 to 10 miles left.
I think it was more of a precautionary, too. Your feet were getting so swollen, you didn't know where they were going to rub in those shoes either.
Right. So got up there, did the normal stop. I think I had 2 ices at that aid station and a Dr. Pepper and a Go Bar. And I loaded my pack with 3 more gels, a Go Bar, and obviously replaced the bottles.
Switched out your hat.
Yeah.
You were off.
Switch out the hat, grab the sunglasses.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to the finish line.
Yeah, you were back on the road there for a bit.
Which was very hot.
Yeah, it was cooking.
It was beaten down on that road, and that's the road that you have to climb up. So I climbed up that hill, got on top, and I kept hiking it even though it was a flat road just because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to spike my heart rate, do anything crazy, and I waited till I dipped into the woods again to pick up the pace. At this point in the race, I'm doing a lot of hiking.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of running, but I would do some surges of maybe 50 yards. So I would, hike for 200 to 300 yards and then try to pick it up for 50 yards. And by pick it up, I mean run at like an 11-minute pace. So it's nothing crazy fast, but we're just doing a little bit of surging on the flats and some of the downhills that aren't super steep.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on my way to the finish at this point. I was really slamming the liquids at this point too, because I knew I had an unmanned water station. So I knew I could fill up halfway through this section. So I was really making sure I stayed on top of hydration and not conserving any of it. I think it's easy when you get close to the finish line to neglect your nutrition and hydration a little bit. But I made sure I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still taking gels. I mean, I took a gel at mile 99. So
Yeah.
I was still staying on top of calories. And I hit that unmanned water station, and I was like, I think that's really the point where I'm like, yep, we're finishing. We're finishing this race.
That last unmanned water station was around 98, you said?
Yeah, roughly 98, 99, because we had 3 miles. We pretty much had like 3.5 miles after that. So it would have been about mile 99.
Yeah.
So, we filled up the bottles and picked up the pace a little bit, and we hit mile 99, mile 100, and like I don't even know what I was really thinking. Like, I just knew that we were about to do exactly what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And just the culmination of like all the hard work we've done this past year, it all paid off. And I don't think that any of it was done in vain at all. Like, everything we did, from nutrition to all the early morning workouts, all the races we did leading up to this race this year, they all just came together, and all the experience just it all paid off. And we crossed the road and kind of do this little curve around, and then there's a steep little hill you got to climb. And I climbed up out of here, and I mean, I was moving pretty fast at the finish. I had told Lilly before the race even started, I said, when we finish this race, I want to cross the finish line with you, because this is something that we started together, and we're going to finish the damn thing together. And that's what we did. I told her to meet me. There's a shelter house, and you kind of run past the shelter house, which is where all the aid station stuff is set up.
Yeah.
And then you run
through the arch,
through the little bit of yard there. I don't know if it's 20 yards of
it's not too far
grass, and then they have the start line arch. And I picked you up at the shelter house and ran through the arch with you and finished off the East Fork 100. And
I was so eager to wait for you. I got a text, and you said I just hit mile 100. I've got to be close.
And let me tell you, it's not fun when you hit mile 100 and you think you're almost there, and then you got to run 2.5 more miles.
Yeah, the course was a little bit long,
which we knew.
Yeah,
we knew going in, which is pretty normal for ultras, actually. So no.
I was gonna say, I think I'd rather have it long than short.
Oh, absolutely. You always want to have it long, because it wouldn't have been cool if I'd have ran 99 miles.
Right.
So, but the finish line emotions were unbelievable, and exactly what I expected them to be. I think there was some tears from some of us.
Me especially. Yeah, I've just been eagerly waiting. I was just so proud. I've never been more anticipatory, and never been more anticipating of an event to happen. And just knowing that you were seconds away from accomplishing something that was so meaningful to you was an amazing part to be there.
Yeah, it was definitely a crazy roller coaster of emotions at the finish line. And we crossed that finish line together.
Mm-hmm.
And
thankfully your mom and dad were there as well. So it was just a very big moment to have everybody together.
Yeah, we crossed the finish line and picked up our buckle.
Yeah.
And we got that first buckle. We set out to get our buckle this year, and we did it at East Fork. It was an unbelievable, well, I guess 2 days technically, but just an unbelievable experience. The course was awesome. The views were great. We ran around William Harsh Lake, I think it's called, there at East Fork State Park, and just incredible views all day long. The race was really put on very well. The course was marked great. We had about 10,500 feet of elevation gain for the course, over 102 miles ish. My watch told me I ran 102 and some odd miles. which is about what they said it would run. So, but yeah, just an absolutely awesome race. And Power Ultras put on a great event, and this was actually only the second year of the race and the first year for the 100-mile distance. So last year they had 100K was the longest distance, and then they introduced the 100 miler this year. So just an unbelievable day, and I can't thank my parents and especially Lilly enough for all they do. These races aren't possible without a crew. I mean, some people do them crewless, but I couldn't imagine not having you there, taking care of me and just making sure that I'm staying mentally with it and that I have all the fuel and stuff I need to succeed.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
It's really ultra running and running in general is really a team sport.
Absolutely.
And people don't always see that side of it. They see me picking up the buckle, but they don't see all the behind the scenes work that you did. And that's why we crossed the finish line together, because this is what we did. It wasn't something that I did. As the old saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
That's really sweet.
That is 100% true in ultras and in life. And
thanks, babe.
It was just an awesome day, and I was so glad to have you and my parents a part of it.
Yeah, I loved being there. I'm so proud of you still to this day to talk about it and be able to share that experience with you. I couldn't imagine not being there. I would be a worried, sick mess.
You were probably a worried mess anyways.
I was. I mean, I get the occasional text here and there, and then, I mean, at some point, I start calculating and knowing how far it's going to be before I see him again. That was kind of my guide, which was really easy at the start, and then as the night went on and the day got going again, it kind of changed quite a bit on me, which you made it challenging, but I can't imagine how challenging that race would have been for you yourself. So I'm very proud of you, and I will continue to support and guide you through everything you want to do.
Absolutely. It was a great day. 31 hours, 26 minutes.
I believe so.
12th out of 72 runners.
How many finished?
The finish rate was 54%.
Wow.
So 46% dropout rate.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy course. I mean, the elevation wasn't crazy, but there was a lot of rollers that were taxing. You had to go up and then
the water crossings, blister potential there.
There's a lot more people that drop out for blisters than anything else in this race.
Yeah.
So we did a great job of staying on top of taping, socks, shoes, and we got home with really no blisters. The feet were pretty
Did you have any sores at all or anything?
Feet were pretty swollen, very swollen. And we're going to lose a few toenails here in the next few days. But other than that, I mean, feet are fine. So I want to thank you guys for sticking with us throughout this podcast. It's been quite a long one. And we just really enjoy having you a part of it, and hope that you'll stick with us for the rest of our journey. Please leave us a podcast review and let us know on our Instagram at HunterFoltz1 what kind of podcasts episodes you want to see in the future. And you can just keep up with daily content there. We will be having some extra content to go along with this. We're going to do some episodes on what my training looked like for East Fork 100. And then we're also going to do a podcast episode about kind of the recovery methods that I use post-race. We are about 2 weeks post-race today.
Yep.
So I think we're technically like 12 days from the finish since we finished.
Have you run yet?
I have not done any running yet. So one thing I did in earlier this year when I ran Mohican, the 50-miler, I ran too quickly after the race, and it caused a little bit of IT band pain and some knee pain, which you guys will find out all about this in the next episode when we discuss my training up into this race. But I definitely didn't want to push into running very quickly after this race. Yeah. So just letting my body recover and do its thing, and we'll get back to it here in a few days.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys for being here again, and be sure to follow us on all social media.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
See ya.